Today, we're going to practice the pen tool. The pen tool is probably one of the most useful and important tools in all of Adobe Illustrator. What the pen tool allows us to do is to manually freehand draw shapes and lines. And then it actually lets us go back so that we can modify those shapes. So for this lesson, you're going to download the worksheet I've provided on Canvas, and you're going to follow along with what I do. So let's get started. Okay, so we have our worksheet open and we're here on the first page. What we're going to do is walk through a series of exercises to practice the pen tool and also learn about anchor points and handles. And that is the basic way that vector objects are set up in Adobe Illustrator. And we'll talk about that as we go. First thing we need to do is select our pen tool. So that's the key command P, or you can come over here to the toolbar and you'll find it right here. If you hover over this icon, a little tutorial will come up, and you could even click this Learn More. That will give you some additional information about the pen tool. Now if we click and hold this icon, we can see that there are 3 additional tools underneath the pen tool. I'm going to bring them all out. This first one is our default pen tool, and it can sort of do everything. This second one will add anchor points. This third one will subtract anchor points, and this fourth one will adjust curves on an object or line. The next thing we want to do is make sure that our fill color is set to naught and our stroke color is set to black. Now we're ready to get started. So on this top row, you'll see the guides that I've set for you. We're going to work down here on this bottom row and recreate what's on the top. So with the pen tool selected, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to rest my cursor on the end of this line. It will be very helpful to you if you have Smart Guides selected. To put those on, come up to View and make sure Smart Guides is checked. So again, I have my cursor here. First thing I need to do is just click. Now that has created an anchor point. From that anchor point, we can see a line is being automatically generated. So if I come up here, click again, I've created a second anchor point, and they're actually connected by this line. We're going to do that again. And now we have 3 anchor points. I'm going to hit V, or the selection tool, just to break off here. This is called an open path. It's called open because it's not connecting back on itself. So let's come over to this pentagon, and here we're going to create a closed path. So the same thing, we're just going to click, and as we click, it's filling in those gaps and it's automatically creating the shape. Now, when you come to close a path, you'll see on your cursor this little circle popped up next to my icon. You can see it there. That is the symbol telling me that when I click, it's going to close the path. So now I have a closed path. Let's come over to our third. So another thing we can do with anchor points in the pen tool is hold down Shift to move at straight and 45-degree angles. So I'm going to start here in the corner and click. If I hold down Shift, you'll see it's locked me in on this angle. I'm going to come over here holding down Shift still, click. Now if I come down here and hold Shift, I can either do straight. If I come over here, it'll lock it in at a 45-degree. So if you want to make 45 degrees, all we have to do is hold Shift. Now we know how to make straight lines and set anchor points with the pen tool. The next thing we're going to do is create curves. These kind of curves that we're seeing are typically called Bezier curves, and the pen tool lets us make them. So with the pen tool selected, I'm going to come down to this bottom row, and what I'm going to do to initiate a curve is click and hold. So when I click and hold, you'll see that these 2 lines have come off of the anchor point. These are called handles. Now I can hold Shift again to lock these in, and to make this first curve, I'm just going to bring it up to this line, and then I'm going to release. So now, when I go to make my second anchor point, you can see that it's anticipating the curve. that could happen out of that anchor point for me. So when I come over here and click this next one, I'm going to click and hold. Now I'm going to drag down. And so now you can see, I can see in real time where that curve is happening. Now I might eyeball this, and I could probably get pretty close. I'm going to show you another tip. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to click. Now I'm going to use the direct selection tool. This tool lets us get at the anchor points and at the handles. So I'm going to come over to this handle. I'm going to click it and hold it. And now I can adjust the curve even after I've set that anchor point. I'm going to hold Shift, drag this handle up to this guide, and let go. Now let's make a continuous curve. So just as we did on the first curve, we're going to click and hold, drag up. I'm holding Shift to lock it into position. And now I have my first anticipated curve. Now to make this kind of a curve, we're going to need another anchor point in the middle. So I'm going to come here to the middle, click and hold and drag down. We see we have that first curve. Now I'm just going to repeat it over here by clicking and dragging up, aligning up to this grid line. Now we have a continuous curve. Now we're going to make a 45-degree angle curve. So again, the same thing we can do as we did on the first page is we can hold Shift to lock the anchors in at a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to set my anchor point and curve, click and hold. Now hold Shift, and that will lock me in at 45 degrees. And now for this one, we don't need to set a point in the middle. We can actually come over to the end. I'm going to click and hold, and now you can see what it's doing with that curve. I'm holding Shift again to bring that anchor points and the handles up to this guide here, and then I'm going to release. So that's how we make Bezier curves with the pen tool. Now on page 3, we're going to create the same thing, but we're going to do it through a different process. So instead of putting the curves in as we make the anchor points, we're going to start from a straight line with no curves. So let's select our pen tool, come down here to our first one, and let's just draw a straight line. So click those anchor points. To break off from this, I'm going to click V on my selection tool. So now we have a straight line with no curves. So this is where these other tools will come in handy. I'm going to select this fourth tool, and this is going to let us put curves into these anchor points. So if I click an anchor point with that tool, you'll see it's automatically putting a curve in. So now all I have to do is hold Shift, bring this up here. Now for the second one, just click that again, automatically puts the handles and the curve in. And now we have a single curve. Now let's go over to the second one and draw another line. This time we're going to need to add an anchor point. So you'll see, even with my base pen tool selected, if I drag it over the line, the little plus appears. That lets me add an anchor point anywhere along here. I'm going to come to the middle, and I'm going to click. So now we have 3 anchor points. Now we want to put curves. So let's come up here to this fourth tool again. We're going to do the same thing. Just click and drag. Same in the middle. And then a third one. And now we have a continuous curve. Let's come to the last one, and again we'll draw a straight line. Now we're going to come back and put our curves in. Same thing, we just click and drag, holding Shift for that 45-degree angle. And now we have our Bezier curves created right out of straight lines. Things get a little more complicated. Here's an instance where we might need to break a path or start to take a curve in a different direction. And so we can do that with the pen tool. So starting here in the middle, I'm going to trace this shape. I'm going to start here on this side. I'm going to click and drag to initiate my curve. I'm going to bring it up to this guide here and release. Going to come up to this top middle. Same thing, click and drag to set my anchor point and my curves. Going to come down to this side. Now you'll see if I want to align to this grid, it's messed up this curve up here. We're going to leave that for now and come back and fix it later. I'm going to come down to the bottom here. Going to set this curve, match that up as best I can. But now when I want to come up to here, you'll see the curve is continuing, but not in the way we want it to continue. So let's come to this one. Let's click and drag, and we'll set this anchor point and handle. Now we'll go back and fix what's gone wrong. I'm going to start over here on this side. With my direct selection tool, I'm going to click this anchor point. Now if I go to adjust this handle, you'll see that it's going to move the other side of it at the same time. Now that's very helpful as it keeps the curve consistent. But in this case, we want to move this handle independently of the other. So to do that, I'm going to hold down the Option key on a Mac. If you're on Windows, hold down the Alt key, and you'll see that a plus has appeared next to my cursor. So holding down the Option or Alt key, now I can click this handle and I can move it independently of the other. Holding Shift is going to keep it in line, and I can bring it right down to this guide. So we can do a similar thing down here. Let's click this anchor point. I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt key, and now I can move this handle to right where I want it. So when we need to go off on a different curve, we can just hold down that Option or Alt key and we can move the handles. Now it's time to put our skills to the test. So here we have a really complex shape. I'm going to walk you through a few pointers and tips, and then I'm going to let you go on your own and trace this poodle. So zooming in over here on this side of the poodle, let's just say I started here with an anchor point, click and drag to initiate the curve, come around here, set another anchor point and curve. Now I just want a straight line coming down here. I don't want this curve. So all I would need to do is if I come back here with my pen tool and hover over that last anchor point, you'll see that this little caret has appeared next to my cursor. So if I click, it's removed the second handle. It's maintained the first one with that curve, but now this next line that I draw is going to be a straight line with no curve. But if I just set that anchor point, you'll see that my next one is still a line, but now I needed a curve. So let me back up. So I've clicked this, and now I have a straight line. I'm going to click again. All I need to do now is hold the Option key or the Alt key. The little caret appears again. And now when I click and hold and drag, I can initiate a new curve. Come down here, draw this out again. I'm going to just use my direct selection tool A and adjust these curves here in the moment. Let me zoom in here on the feet. When you break off of a path, you can get back into it easily with the pen tool. So with the pen tool selected, I hover over an anchor point that's not closed. You'll see the little slash appears. That means that if I click, I've restarted that line. And so now everything I make will be connected to that existing line. I'm going to need a little curve here. So again, I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt key. That's going to initiate a curve. I'm going to come over here. I made that curve a little too big, so I'll go and fix it after the fact. I'm going to come down here to the feet, get another curve. Now I want a straight line again, so again I just hover over, the caret appears, I click, now this is a straight line. And to put a curve back in, I just hold the Option key again as I click out of this anchor point. That creates a curve. I'm going to click here and again hold the Option key. Same thing again. even one more time. And you can see that's how you can get around these more difficult areas. And then we can always go back and we can adjust these handles and anchor points that aren't quite right. So that's using the Option or Alt key in the moment as we're setting anchor points. But let's just say you wanted to work a little differently. I'm going to zoom in over here on the head. I'm going to set an anchor point, draw around here, and I'm not paying too much attention here, or I know I'm just going to fix things after the fact, so I'm just going to set these points, and then I'm going to come back and fix them. So I have my direct selection tool, I break out of this path, I'm going to come over here and select this anchor point. I'm going to clean up this curve. And now to adjust this curve independently, I just hold down the Option or Alt key, the little plus appears. Now I can move that handle. I'm going to do the same with this one. And then I'm just going to finesse these curves to try to get this as close to the original as I can. So again, you can use that Option or Alt key while you're setting anchor points to put the curves in as you go, or you can come back after the fact, move those handles independently, and fix and finesse things as needed. So now we know the basics of the pen tool. We know how to set anchor points and manipulate handles. So complete this worksheet and submit it on Canvas.